Hey everybody, welcome back to Fix My Hog. I'm Mike Rowan. In this video, we're pretty excited. We've partnered with Dennis Kirk. Now, being in the industry, everybody's heard of Dennis Kirk. If you're a rider, you're familiar with them. You know, their website from not only Harley Davidson parts, they've got the metric, they've got the ATV, UTV, off-road. It's kind of a one-stop shop. So, you know, the nice thing is you go on their website, you start looking over all the parts you're going to need for your spring tune-up or whatever. They got their little cart. I myself always got my little list. You can just go on your phone, start adding stuff to the cart. You can kind of see where you're getting at, you know, price-wise, and it's just kind of gives you a nice little organized bin to work out of. So go ahead and check them out, and let's kind of get this review started. So, nice thing about Dennis Kirk, I mean, they pretty much got everything you want. You know, you can look this over here. We got it all laid out. Another nice feature is, you know, you look at this motorcycle. It's a 1988 Heritage. And what you can do is you go on their website, you plug in the year, you know, the make, model, year, and then you start adding in parts, and it's going to tell you if it applies to that vehicle, which is kind of handy, and it's going to have a dollar amount there. So, you know, it's just it's another nice feature, you know, it kind of helps you, you know, get along with your tune-up. So let's go ahead and start here at the beginning. Obviously, you know, routine maintenance. It's springtime, you know, whether you've owned this motorcycle for 3 or 4 years or you just bought the bike, this is the kind of stuff you're going to want to start putting in your little basket. So first things first, obviously, you know, oil and filter. Pretty basic stuff. Everybody knows how to change your oil and filter. And of course, when you're doing that, you're going to get into, you know, tranny oil. You're going to be doing the transmission oil. And of course, primary oil. So, you know, start going down your little checklist. If you've got a factory manual or service manual of some type, this is the kind of stuff they're going to be saying you're going to be needing to do. Now this motorcycle, since, you know, it has been sitting for such a long time, we're not even going to mess around. We're putting new brake fluid in it. And while we're doing the brake fluid, you know, nice little thing, the little rubber diaphragms for the covers, you know, I didn't trust these being 34 years old. I just went ahead and ordered up new ones. They're cheap. It's just one thing. You don't want to be getting into your tune-up and wanting to go riding and then all of a sudden, oh, I need this other little part. I should have, you know, pre-ordered that. So look at your manual, look your motorcycle over, start adding stuff to the cart. Next up, we're going to be doing fork oil. And that's, there again, pretty straightforward routine maintenance. But when you're thinking fork oil, there's a couple of little components you're going to want. You know, just the little drain screw brass washers, stuff you don't think about. You might want to pre-order them. These O-rings, they go on the top of the fork cap. This thing's 34 years old. I'm sure that, you know, this O-ring's deteriorated. We're not going to reuse it. You don't want to stop your project and go, oh, great, now I got to order this little O-ring, you know. So, all right, so just little things like that you want to kind of keep an eye on for. Speaking of the oil filter, I kind of like these with the nut on them. You know, on newer motorcycles, it's kind of nice because everything's kind of crowded in tight. You know, this bike, it's pretty accessible, but I like the nut on there. So obviously, you know, spark plugs, that's going to be something you're going to be replacing. Put them on your little list. This motorcycle here, obviously, we're going to be doing a lot more extensive work. And so we are going to be updating the fuel petcock because it's so old. I don't want to put a rebuild kit in it. I don't want to order an inexpensive petcock and have it leak. The fuel line, obviously, we're going to be doing that because it's old, you know, and it's just, this is cheap stuff. Pinch clamps, you're going to be on replacing them because you'll be, you know, cutting the factory ones off. So put that on your little list. Going over some other stuff, thread locker, you know, that's going to be a deal. When you're looking at the manual, they'll be saying, hey, this bolt, you got to put lock, you know, you got to lock it. So put that on your list. We'll be moving on here. Let's see. Well, more importantly, the carburetor. Now on this bike, it had been sitting, and fortunately, the fuel tank had been properly stored to where it wasn't deteriorated, but the carburetor wasn't. So I've kind of already been in there. And if you're on their website, you're going to be seeing, you know, a carb rebuild kit. And this bike's got kind of an older Bendix carburetor on it. And the nice thing about when you get something off of Dennis Kirk or something like that, they the aftermarket company puts in a variety of year groups in there, so you don't have to really overthink it. When you order that carb rebuild kit, it's going to fit a couple different years. So for one price, you're just getting all these O-rings, all these inlet needles and everything. It's going to kind of cover the whole base. But don't let that fool you, because if you're looking at the OEM number and you're looking at aftermarket, the aftermarket's going to say it fits all these year groups. It does. And the OEM's saying, well, it's only going to fit this year group, because the aftermarket one's providing multiple year groups. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to use the aftermarket number for reference. So, okay, moving along here. Obviously, the air filter on this thing is completely deteriorated. We're just going to put a new one in it. They're relatively inexpensive. The battery, we went with the premium battery because it's the best battery, and it doesn't have those little standoffs on there, especially on a rubber mount. The bike's always doing this, and the battery cables are coming loose. And there again, every time you change your oil filter, you're checking your battery cables. And if this bike, fortunately, this bike's really low mileage, but if you bought an 88 bike with 100,000 miles on it, you're probably going to be wanting to order battery cables as well. So Dennis Kirk's got all that stuff, and they're going to be prompting you on that when you're building your list. So moving along, when you're doing the primary oil, obviously you're going to want to replace those gaskets, the inspection cover gasket, the derby cover gasket. They've got the little O-rings for the hardware in there. One little kit, it's pretty slick. There again, we're going to be kind of pulling the primary cover on this bike just to kind of take a little overview, inspect it, just because it's so old. So I went ahead and just ordered a primary cover gasket. And the nice thing about that is it is comparable to OEM. It's the Cometic AMF or AFM style. And the nice thing is you can order just one. Most of the dealers, when they order from their vendor, they have to buy 10. And so if you're on their website, you can just buy 2 little crush washers. You don't have to buy 10 of them or something. So that's kind of a nice feature. And moving down the list here, we'll just kind of go over some of the tools you might need, and you'll probably be able to order. Okay, you got your factory manual. You're always referring to that. And here's another little item you're going to probably want is some cable lube. Because obviously, you'll be doing throttle cables, clutch cable. This bike's got a speedometer cable you got to lube. So you'd see that in your manual. A little ratio right, fork oil, you're going to be doing that. If you don't have an impact driver, you might want one of them. This is a, big wrench for your top nut on your fork tube. They got a couple different tools for that. You could probably use a crescent wrench if you had to. Something. Obviously, the belt gauge tool. If you want to set your deflection, if you're not comfortable with feeling it yourself, you can buy the tool. This here tool is a special pinch clamp tool for the fuel lines. And more importantly, we've got the oil filter strap wrench, because if the guy before you was Hercules and he torqued that oil filter or over torqued it, you're going to need some sort of tool to get that oil filter off. Here's the spark plug gapper tool. The NGKs, they come with a little protective cap so it doesn't get crushed, but that doesn't mean it's not set to the right spec. So double check that. This is an Evo Evolution motor. It's got a lifter tappet screen cover. This little tool here is kind of, it's like having a big screwdriver. You wouldn't necessarily need to run out and buy one, but I just happen to have one because that's what I do. Here's a nice little tool that, you're probably going to want to have if you own a motorcycle with spoke wheels, is a spoke wrench, because spokes equal maintenance. And fortunately, this bike, I've kind of checked them already and the spokes aren't seized. I did pre-lube them about a week ago, and I just kind of kept lubing them just in case. And if you got a bike with spoke wheels, you're going to want to babysit them. So we've got videos on the website on, how to true a wheel and all that, and kind of check that out. But spoke maintenance is a big deal, and if you don't babysit them, it'll bite you. So moving on, this little welding rod tool is kind of a nice little tool for doing belt adjustment. Because on like a Softail or a Dyna or a Bagger, what they want to do on a Softail is they're checking the reference point from the center line of swing arm back to the axle. This is just a quick, easy tool you can make. In fact, if you have a factory Harley manual, they have a little diagram in there how to make it, the dimensions. So either way, that's what you're checking is, you want to make sure when you align your belt that it's even. So I think we touched base on the ratio right, something you want to order up. But more importantly now, moving on, another thing you're going to be doing if you're going through the manual is you're going to be repacking wheel bearings. This bike's been sitting for a long time. We don't know the condition. We don't know if this guy pressure washed the bike and got water in there and they're rusty, because that's a common problem. People wash their bikes a lot and they force water in there. So go ahead, get some wheel seals on order, because you will be repacking wheel bearing. You figure they ran a Timken wheel bearing all the way to 1999, and in 2000 they went to a sealed wheel bearing. So put that on your list, add that to your cart. Moving along, obviously if you're doing the wheel seals, this motorcycle obviously is going to get new tubes, got a side metal valve tire, the rim strips, people aren't thinking about that. Put them in your cart. And then more importantly, we've partnered with Dunlop. They hooked us up with some really good D402s. This tire's been around forever. And the nice thing about the Dunlop, of course, is heavy duty carcass. I mean, if you compare a Dunlop to any other tire, the carcass on it, the load rating for your Harley, I mean, these are heavy motorcycles, If this was a touring bike and you're riding two up, there's a lot of load generated on the tire. So I love the Dunlops. Definitely wouldn't regret that, but there again, they're available on Dennis Kirk, so check them out. So, and as usual, obviously, work clean, get some shop towels. They've got all the chemicals and lubricants on their website. So, go ahead and check out DennisKirk.com.